Hello and welcome to my tutorial on how to paint a pie in Procreate, or I guess you would say illustrate. We are going to be using a little bit of the animation feature as well, so this will be a really fun tutorial. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm in Procreate and I'm going to go to my canvases and select a 2000 by 2000 pixel, but feel free to select whatever size you want. I recommend 2000 by 2000 just because it has a better quality to it as far as resolution goes. The first thing we need to do is sketch. So I'm gonna grab like a black is fine. And I'm coming over here to my brushes and I'm gonna grab a sketching brush, so an HB pencil. And I'm just going to make my pie. So I'm gonna start off with that kind of dome shape. And then I want that crust to come over the edge. So I'm making this little scalloped edge here. It doesn't have to be perfect because it's never perfect when you make it in real life, unless you're like a really good baker. Then I'm making this second edge here to kind of show where it folds down into that pie pan. So then we want to make our pie pan, and we're just going to make two lines coming down here and then a small shallow curve. And we might add some like details to this. Maybe we'll want to do some stripes on this. It's up to you, or you could put circles or nothing, whatever you want. And then for the pie, I think I'm just going to do these little teardrop shapes at the top, only because I want this to be a really simple tutorial. And if we did the cross ones, it might get a little crazy. Okay, so we have our pie sketch, and I'm going to come up here and add a new layer. And what I'm going to do is outline these pieces. I'm actually going to put this layer underneath, so I'm going to hold on to it and drag it underneath my sketch layer. That way I can still see my sketch when I'm painting, but I want to make sure that I'm on a different layer so that I can remove this later. Now I'm going to grab, let's see, inking. I'm going to go to my technical pen, and then I'm going to grab a brown that looks similar to a pie crust. So we're gonna start a little darker because I'm gonna show you guys how to use a clipping mask to bring some texture in. All right, that looks good. And I'm just outlining it. So a trick here, if you guys feel like you have a shaky hand or you can't get the exact shape that you want, all you have to do is just draw along as best you can and then hold it down, and it'll automatically make like a perfect arc. Then I'm coming out here and I'm just following along my pie crust. You have to do this one by hand. There's no shortcut for this. And I'm going to make sure that this touches. The reason I'm going to do that is because if this isn't a completely closed shape, what's going to happen is my color is basically gonna go all over my paper, and I don't want that. Now I'm grabbing that brown and just dragging it over and filling that up. Now for the second layer on the bottom, I am going to add a new layer because later on we're gonna add clipping masks, and we want these to be separate because they'll be different colors. And I think I'm gonna grab like a cream tone, really light. I don't want anything too dark, and more on the warm side. And I'm gonna do the same thing. Just gonna outline this. And something you could do, because this layer, well, now it's gonna be, I put it underneath this layer. Because it's underneath, I could draw a line across and it doesn't matter because you won't see it because it's underneath that layer. So that's a little shortcut. And then we do the same thing, just fill it in. Okay, we have our basic layout. Now we want to add some interest here. So one thing I'm going to do is add a new layer on top of my pie layer. Another thing you guys can do is you can name your layers. I want this tutorial to be quick, so I'm not going to name my layers. Plus it's a pretty simple sketch. But when you start getting into more intricate sketches, I highly recommend naming your layers or it's gonna be a hot mess. Now that I'm on this layer, I'm going to click it. I'm gonna click clipping mask, and you can see this little arrow means that there's going to be a mask on that now. I am going to select that brown color and then move up to a lighter tone. I'm going to grab a texture, maybe something that would look like a pie crust. Let's see. I really like using charcoals. I'm gonna use this carbon stick. It's not gonna look exactly like a pie crust, and then I'm just going to add, that's actually a little too dark, or a little too light. And I just put my brush, and that's too bright. I just lightly tap my brush over this, and I'm going to get some texture so it looks a little more interesting. And let's say our light source is coming from this left-hand side. I also think I want to make this a little more yellow. There we go. Then I would maybe put a little extra over here. But if you do too much, it's going to fill in everything. So you don't want to do too much. And then maybe I'm going to grab something a little darker, and I'm going to reduce the size of my brush and put just a little like shadow over here. And then what I can do is grab my smudge tool, and let's go, so we can change our smudge brush. I'm gonna change it to sketching pencil. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Let's change it to the same texture that we have, the charcoal, the carbon stick. Oops, and just make sure your brush is really small, and then kind of blend it in. Just a little bit. Now, there would definitely be some shadows coming in here. We're not looking for perfection, but we do want to make it look a little realistic. So I'm gonna go back to grabbing that carbon stick and make sure I'm really low. So I'm at a 1 and I have that darker shade. And just where they come up here, I'm gonna make a little shadow. And maybe just add a little more shadow back in here. Then I'm going to go back to my smudge tool, and remember it's on carbon stick, and just lightly smudge it in, just like you would do in real life on paper with charcoal. Or I used to use this technique with colored pencils and a Q-tip, and I would rub it in that way. Maybe a little, I'm gonna give it a little more shadow right there. And right there. Okay. And last but not least, so that looks good to me. I'm happy with it. If you unclick this, it's going to take your clipping mask away. I like it, so I'm gonna say merge down. So now these are together. And I would like to make it look like jam is inside of, or let's say it's like a cherry pie. I'm going to grab a kind of jammy color and make sure I'm on a new layer. Going back up to my inking technical brush, and then I'm just going to outline these and then drop in some color. So I'm gonna outline and drop in color. Now you can see that my color fill, it's leaving those little lines. What I need to do is, I'll show you. Oops. So I'm outlining it, and then I'm holding it down, and I'm going to see how it's increasing the threshold. I'm holding down my pen and moving it across the screen. And now it's filled in all those spaces. Okay, there we go. And we want to do the same thing here. We want to make these look like there's some darker shadows. So I'm gonna grab just more saturated, kind of like purpley. And since our light's coming in from the left, the shadow would be here. I think. It doesn't matter as long as you're consistent. So making that, actually do this one over here. And if you want to blend it a little bit, you can just grab that smudging tool. And I think, oops, that went too far. I think it might be nice to add just a little white. So I'm gonna grab white, I have my technical pen, and I'm just gonna make like a little circle and a line. Not on every one. Maybe like that. Okay, that looks good. We can leave it on a separate layer. Now for the bottom part, I am going to add a new layer, do a clipping mask. I'm gonna grab that color. You can hold down, oops. You can hold down your finger to grab it. And then I'm going to get a lighter color. And remember, we're on a separate layer, so we don't have to worry about it getting the color on the other section. And then I'm going to increase my charcoal size and just make it a little lighter. And there would probably be a little shadow here, so reduce your brush and then just, oops, that's a little too. Make like a little shadow. We're gonna blend this, so don't worry if it's a little harsh right now. So there's shadow coming down here, and then I'm grabbing my blending tool and just blending it out. And if you feel like it needs a little bit more, you can totally do that. Maybe in some sections you make it a little darker. Like I grabbed a little darker. Perfect. And I am happy with that, so I'm gonna merge those two. And I would like to do some stripes on here. I think I'm gonna do a navy blue. I hope that's not a mistake. You know what? No. This is another thing that's so hard, is coming up with a color palette. I think I'm gonna make it maybe like a mustard yellow. No, we're going with blue. I'm just gonna make a decision. You guys make it whatever color you want. I have my inking technical pen. I'm gonna do a new layer in case I don't like it. I can easily get rid of it. Then I'm just going to make a line. Another line, close them out, and then I can just fill it in like, oops, fill it in like that. So whether you guys are doing, you know what, I don't like that. I don't think I'm gonna do anything. Let's see. Get rid of that. Yeah, I kind of like that. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm gonna put a little outline over this with, I'm gonna grab a grayish brown. I'm gonna grab my technical pen, and I'm on a new layer. In case I don't like this, I can get rid of it easy. I'm just gonna kind of make sure that your layer is on top of everything. I'm going to just kind of lightly like sketch. So I'm moving my pen in like short motions. And that's not dark enough. Okay, we need to make this darker. So grab a little darker brown so it shows up better. And then come back. And make sure your layer is up on top. Hello, there we go. And just coming in here with like short, sketchy strokes. And you could even do the other side of the pie, right? So it goes like, like the little scalloped edge. You guys don't have to add this if you don't want to. Oops, I'm getting out of control here. So I'm just making tiny, like tapping motions to sketch this out here. Maybe a little of that. And then these guys, probably outline them a little bit. You could even, if you want, put like some hash marks here. If you want to emphasize like a shadow. I don't like that, so I'm not gonna do that. Lots of not liking things today. And then just this pie pan, and then maybe I will do the shadow. Nope, I'm not gonna do that. Okay, there we go. So we have our pie, and what we're going to do is add a background color. Maybe, It's like kind of dark. And we wanna make steam coming out of this. So now to animate it, what we wanna do is get rid of our sketch layer because we don't need that anymore. But all of these other layers we're happy with. So combine those. Make sure you don't combine it though to your background layer. Okay, so we've combined all of our layers and now we have just this one layer with the pie. But don't combine it to your background layer because you want that to be separate. I'm gonna move this more in the center, turn it just a bit. And we wanna make this look like it has steam coming out of it. How we're gonna do that is add a new layer. And then you're going to need to duplicate this. Whoops, I did not mean to do that. Duplicate your pie layer 5 times. You can also label these if you want. And then what I'm going to do is this layer, so I'm creating a new layer on top. I have my technical pen. I'm gonna grab like a whitish gray color and I'm going to make these little squiggly lines coming out of the pie, okay? So that's our first layer and we can go ahead, or actually I'm going to come over here and do a Gaussian blur just slightly. So I'm just holding my pen and moving it across. So like 4%. Okay, that looks good. I'm gonna merge that down. Same thing, this next, I created a new layer on top of the second pie. And I'm going to make this new little squigglies right above the last ones. And then I'm going to blur these more than the last ones. So let's say 6%. Then I'm gonna merge those down. And you just keep going. Now, if these are bothering you, you can turn off these other layers, but I like them there because then I can tell where my next squiggly, steamy things go. So again, make sure you're making like little squigglies and then going into Gaussian blur, increasing. So last one was 6. So now I'm gonna do, let's say 8. Merge them down, another layer, new squigglies. Maybe they're kind of coming back over here now. I'm going to do Gaussian blur. Now we're gonna go up to 10. Merge down. I'm actually gonna do one extra one, so duplicate one extra time. Another layer, more squigglies, maybe like that. Gaussian blur, up to 12. Merge it down, and then this is our last one, so it'll be the most faded. So just almost like 18, you can barely see it, and then merge it down. Okay, so we have all of these lovely layers. Make sure all your layers are on. Come over here to your little wrench icon and hit animation assist. Now, I have this already set up, but you want it to be on a loop. You want the frames per second. We're gonna play with this a little bit. We're okay with the onion skin. So you want the opacity of the onion skin to be low. The onion skin frames are fine. But if you want this to slow down, your frames per second is where you would do that. So if I go all the way up here, holy moly. But the lower I go, the slower it will go. So I feel like 3 is pretty good. So there you go, you have your steaming pie, and you could add more and more layers and this would take even longer. So that's totally up to you, but it's just a fun little thing, little animation tool that Procreate has. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I'd love to see what you create. Tag me on Instagram at Lavender and C.